Okay. Welcome everybody to our weekly webinar. My name is Dr. Jackie Jacob. I'm one of the two state specialists that we have. The other one is Dr. Tony Pescatori. He's there, who will be monitoring the chat and people arriving. This webinar is going to be on eggs, managing an egg flock. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. If the question is specific to what I'm talking about and is a clarification of something that I said, then Tony will interrupt me and ask the question. Otherwise, we'll hold all the questions for the end. So you can just type them in the chat box as you think of them, and we'll try and get to them at the end. Oops, I gotta share my screen. Okay. You see in my presentation, Tony?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so I want to make sure that it's on there. So as I said, that's on managing an egg-laying flock in Kentucky, and the two specialists, myself and Dr. Pescatori. So, you know, if you're going to have an egg flock for selling eggs, you have to consider the legal issues first. So we do have a fact sheet on factors to consider before you start a small-scale egg production enterprise in Kentucky. You need to know who you can sell to legally, who can legally buy from you, because those are different laws. Where can you build your chicken houses in terms of distance away from schools, away from churches, away from roads, and all that kind of stuff. How can you dispose of the dead birds? And something you really need to think about is producer liability. Eggs are considered a hazardous food because you can get food poisoning from improperly handled eggs. And if somebody gets sick from your eggs, you could get sued. So, you know, maybe you're adding an egg flock to your farm to try and diversify and increase your income. But if you make them sick, then you could lose the farm. So make sure that you are carrying producer liability if you're going to start selling eggs. So in terms of the selling of eggs in the state of Kentucky, all producers, regardless of size, must follow all aspects of egg law. And this particularly includes safe handling. So eggs must be refrigerated at 45 degrees Fahrenheit or lower once packaged. So you collect your eggs, you clean them, package them, put them in the fridge. You must refrigerate at all times. That means transporting them, selling them at the farmer's market, whatever. They always have to be at 45 degrees Fahrenheit or older or lower. All eggs sold also must be fit for human consumption, which makes sense, right? So not allowed are cracked, leaking eggs, frozen eggs, moldy eggs, eggs with black rot, white rot, can't read my thing, blood rings, which happen when you incubate and then the embryo dies. You can't have adhering yolks, which means, you know, sticking to the side of the shell. You can't have bloody whites. You can't have incubation beyond the ring stage. You can't have filthy eggs, and you can't have any decomposing substance on the eggs. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration when you are collecting your eggs. So make sure you collect them frequently so that you do not have a problem with any of those issues. So the Kentucky Department of Agriculture has the marketing and licensing program, and they are responsible for inspection of eggs at all levels. to ensure consumer safety. So we have another publication online on marketing regulations that specifically affect small-scale egg producers. And so it will go into more detail on some of the regulations. Under Kentucky egg marketing law, all retail businesses, distributors, or plants have to be licensed to sell shell eggs, egg products, or specialty egg products within the Commonwealth of Kentucky. All producers require a license, except if you sell less than 60 dozen eggs a week, and you sell directly to the consumer. So if you are selling to restaurants or stores or bakeries or distributors, you're selling to somebody who's selling to somebody else. So you require a license. If you are selling more than 60 dozen eggs a week and directly to the consumer, you also need a license. So you need to go to the link there, and if you just Google Kentucky egg law, it will come up and you can find the forms for it. So what does 60 dozen eggs per week entail? So if you have 60 dozen times 12 eggs per dozen, that's 720 eggs in a week, divided by 7, because there's 7 days in a week. That's about 103 eggs a day. So if you have around 100 hens, if you have less than that, you sell directly to the consumer, you do not need a license. If you have more than 100 hens, or you sell to a restaurant or grocery store or distributor or baker, you need a license. So you need to fill out the form. Before deciding, you need to review all the statutes, as I said, regulating the sale, washing them, and everything else. Nutritional labeling that has to be on the egg, the refrigeration requirements, the safe handling instructions that need to be on the cartons, and you must use cartons that are not labeled by somebody else. So you cannot use somebody else's cartons, and you cannot reuse your own cartons. So you need a fresh carton every time you sell eggs. If you're selling at the farmer's market, you can have people bring their own eggs and put it into theirs, but all of your information needs to be displayed in your booth with all this information. You have to have the grade there if you've candled and graded them. If you candled but didn't grade them, then it says candled but ungraded. You need the size if you've weighed them, the quantity of them, and your name, address, and phone number or some means of contacting you must be there. The date that the eggs were packed must be there, and an expiration sell-by date, which is like 30 days from the day you packed, or a best by date, which is 45 days after the packing, must be on all cartons that you're selling eggs in. And the fee, there is a specific fee depending on what type of license you need, but they also charge 2 cents per 15 dozen eggs for all eggs sold in Kentucky. So there's a monthly fee and then there's an annual fee. So you need to fill out the form, then they determine how much the fee is based on the type of license you need, based on the answers you do to the questions that they have on the form. Okay, what can you put on your cartons? So I have here 2 examples of cartons of eggs sold in Kentucky. The one on the left does sell to a store who then sells the eggs, so she has to be licensed. The one on the right does not sell to a store. They sell directly to the consumer, so they don't need a license. So the first thing that you have to have is your producer name and contact information, which both of these have. They also have to have whether or not they are graded, and neither of these are graded, but Chelsea's eggs, she has to say candled and ungraded because of the licensing requirement. Elmwood Stock Farms just has ungraded on there. I'm not sure if they're supposed to have candled and ungraded, but it is also USDA certified organic, so you can put certifications on there. So I said they have regulations on the size of it, the amount of days for the expiration or best by or whatever. We're all in that publication that I referred to earlier. You have to have the nutrition label on it, and it has to be the USDA specific label of 70 calories, 6 grams of protein. You cannot change the USDA label without applying for it. And in order to make a change, you have to prove that yours are different. And I think this is an old label because it says cholesterol at 210, and I believe it's 185 on the current label. But anyway, keep refrigerated at or below 45 degrees has to be there, and the safe handling instructions with the specifics that are listed there to prevent illness from bacteria, keep eggs refrigerated, cook eggs until yolks are firm, and cook foods containing eggs thoroughly. That exact wording needs to be there. You cannot make any nutritional claims on your cartons. You can say that they were fed diets high in omega-3 fatty acids, as the Fat Charlie's does, fed high omega diet, but you cannot say omega-3 enriched, because then you have to prove it. Even with the feeding the diets, all you have to do is show a feed analysis to prove it. But if you say the eggs are omega-3 enriched, then you have to prove that the eggs are enriched. You are allowed to say that, non-GMO corn is being used. You can use the word natural since it does not have a legal definition. Raised without antibiotics, you can use. You can say free range. Again, it doesn't have a legal definition. Fat Charlie's there says free running. That doesn't mean anything. That's not the same as free range. That just means they're not in cages. So cage free is the same thing. Pasture raised, you can say that they're on pastures. If you use the phrase raised without hormones, you must include the disclaimer that federal law prohibits the use of hormones in poultry production. So you have a little asterisk wherever you put raised without hormones, and then down at the bottom you have the disclaimer that federal law prohibits the use of hormones in poultry production. I believe with natural you have to do the same thing. You have to have an asterisk and say what natural means. How are you defining the word natural? Any certifications can be on there, animal welfare, organic, whatever. You can see the pasture raised eggs in the second row are animal welfare approved, so they have a certification on it. I think the one in the top right, Land O'Lakes, has a UEP, United Egg Producers thing on it, so you can have certifications on there. You also need a product recall plan. So you need to remove any product from sale that has been deemed unsafe or in violation of FDA or USDA regulations. And this is why you have to have your contact information on the egg cartons you use when you sell the eggs. If somebody gets sick from the eggs that you sold them, they have your contact information, and the USDA or the Kentucky Department of Agriculture will come and visit you, and will start testing your birds for salmonella if that was what the problem was. So you need to be able to locate product that you have sold or are going to sell that have the same circumstances of production. So it is essential that you maintain a log of customers that you sell product to, so that if products sold on a certain day are what made people sick, you can check back to see, who else did you sell to on the same day. Doug, you look confused. Do you have a question?
Well, yeah. Let me mute TV. I was kind of listening to a hunting program too. We've got some chickens that we have here, 3 of them specifically. Now we've got 6 of Dominiques and 6 Calico Princesses, but we bought 3. There are older chickens, and the woman we bought them from, all that she could tell us is that they were big brown stock, and they do lay big brown eggs. Do you have to specify which species of chicken that the eggs come from?
Well, chickens are species. You do not need to say the breed. No.
Okay.
No, there's no indication of breed needed at all when you sell it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem. Good question. Okay, so then the question comes, egg washing, yes or no? And salmonella is the main food poisoning bacteria that you're concerned about, but there are many different types of salmonella. So Salmonella enteritidis is actually in the chicken's body and can localize in the reproductive tract, so that the eggs that she lays are going to be contaminated with Salmonella enteritidis. So even if you wash the eggs, it doesn't have any effect because she has Salmonella in there. The levels are usually very small, if at all, there. And if you refrigerate your eggs, which is why we have a requirement to refrigerate the eggs, then you don't have to worry about it. Washing deals with the outside of the egg, and there can be salmonella from the fecal material on the outside of the egg that requires washing. So research done at the North Carolina State University showed that dirty, unwashed eggs from outdoor flocks had a very high level of bacteria counts on them, and they report counts as logs. So that's a high value. Just take my word for it if you don't understand logs. Washing reduced it considerably, but it still had a high level of contamination. Even clean, unwashed eggs from outdoor flocks had a considerable amount of bacteria on them, and washing them properly eliminated it down to very low levels. So washing is strongly recommended, but it's very important that you wash the eggs correctly. So KDA, Kentucky Department of Agriculture, they list eggs as a hazardous food, like I said. And the purpose of cleaning the eggs is to remove the bacteria that might otherwise enter through the shell, or that might contaminate the eggs when you break the eggs open. So they recommend gathering the eggs frequently and washing them as soon as possible after collection. They don't recommend, washing badly soiled or cracked eggs. So if it's really dirty, throw it out, don't wash it. You don't want to risk making somebody sick and getting sued. So remove any badly soiled eggs. Don't even bother washing them. So
I apologize to interrupt you. What would you recommend washing them with?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So egg washing has to be done with running water. You do not want the eggs sitting in water when you wash them. If you have just a few eggs, you can wash them in the sink like you do here, just with the warm running water, which I'll get to in a minute, and then dip them in a sanitizer later if you want. Do not put the eggs in water. Do not allow them to soak. If you do that, the bacteria gets into the water, and when you put them in there, the shells of eggs have lots of pores in them, and the bacteria can get inside the shell if you improperly wash your eggs. So do not put eggs in water to wash them. If you have to soak them in water to get them clean, they're too dirty. You shouldn't be washing them at all. Don't buy one of these egg washing machines that submerge them in water as well. Don't recommend those either. And this one that came out with really, I don't use it. They're saying, 15 minutes is, as long as you can leave maximum time for putting eggs in. No, you do not want to stick your eggs in water. So don't do that. There are a variety of egg washing machines. Unfortunately, they're quite expensive. So you need a fair number of eggs that you're selling to make it worthwhile. But you can buy, small scale egg washers, or like the guy on the one on the far right, you can create your own if you are so engineeringly inclined. I'm not, but some people are. So eggs should be less than 90 degrees Fahrenheit before they washed, as they contract when you put them in the water. So you want them below 90 degrees. And why 90 degrees? Well, the body temperature of a chicken is 106. So it's quite warm when it's first laid. So you don't want to wash a really, really fresh egg. You want it down below 90 degrees, which, unless it's 106 out, is going to cool off pretty quick anyway. So the suggested wash water temperatures are between 110 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Never have wash water that's more than 50 degrees above the temperature of the egg, as this will cause breakage, okay? And the reason you want the water warm is that if you use cold water, the contents of the egg will contract. And when it contracts, it's going to suck in that water inside the egg with all that bacteria. But when you're using warm water, then the contents expand and keep out that bacteria from coming in. So it's important to use water that is warmer than the temperature of the egg. You can, as I say, doing it in running water, you can dip it in an egg-specific detergent if you want to add a little extra sanitation, or you can dip it in a sanitizing solution like 200 parts per million of chloride. But it has to be warmer than the detergent solution. So again, you don't want that contraction and all that chemical going inside the egg. So you have to be very careful about doing that. So make sure, one, that the egg is the water is potable. If you don't want to drink it, don't use it to wash your eggs. The iron content needs to be below 2 parts per million to prevent the growth of bacteria. Never expose eggs to temperatures greater than 128 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll ruin the eggs. And never put wet eggs into cartons or boxes, because the wet eggs can pick up bacteria very easily, and you can also get mold and mildew growing as well. And then, of course, don't forget to clean and sanitize all your equipment each time you use it to prevent the buildup of bacteria and calcium deposits. Also, if you are washing in your home sink, make sure you sanitize the sink afterwards so that any future uses of the sink, you are not getting salmonella cross-contamination on any future food products that might be used or even onto food dishes that you might be using. So if you are doing it in your home sink and running water, make sure that you clean and disinfect the sink and the surrounding area, wash your hands and everything after you finished doing it. Oops. Come on. Okay, so candling of eggs. Candling of eggs requires basically shining a light through the eggs while you're in the dark. It highlights the inside of the egg contents. You can determine the grade. It's based on air cell size, and the grades are AA, A, B, or inedible. Typically, you only see AAs and A's in the stores. Typically, you just see grade A. So as long as you don't have an air cell the size of a quarter, you're pretty much okay when you're selling the eggs. Inedibles are any of those things that I talked about, but it also pulls out blood spots and meat spots that you don't want to confuse your customer breaks open an egg and sees blood in it. They're not going to be very happy. So removing those is always good. And as you saw from Chelsea's eggs, she candles her eggs. So she pulls out those blood and meat spots, but she does not determine a grade. She just pulls out the inedibles from the eggs that she sells. So they are candled, just not graded. And when you put your eggs into the cartons, always put them small end down. So you don't want them small end up. The eggs will stay fresher longer if you put them small end down. So make sure when you're packaging them that you're putting them small end down. Okay, so we do have publications, as I said, on our website. Again, the marketing regulations, the proper handling and transport of eggs, as well as poultry producer liability are all on our website. So make sure that if you're going to start doing this as a commercial enterprise, that you check those things out. Marketing your eggs, which you can use on your labeling, but also, remember to, if you're going to want to get a higher price than what they can buy in the store, you want to be sure that you have a marketing key to getting that sale. So are they cage-free, free roaming, same thing, free range, pasture raised, local, family farm, certified, organic, humanely, or whatever. Make sure that you have something that makes you special, that they can get money for your eggs. Take lots of photographs, especially if you are saying that your chickens are free range. Show your chickens on pasture. If you're selling them as a family farm, show pictures of your family. Use them in your marketing tools. So take lots of pictures that you can use when you are marketing your eggs. You are marketing yourself as much as you are marketing eggs. So have a story that you can use to sell your eggs. If you want to get more than the $1 something or other that they sell at Kroger's, because you're going to cost you more than that to produce it, you want to get your money's worth, you want to make it worthwhile, then you need to have a story to sell. Get Kentucky Proud. If you live in Eastern Kentucky, get Appalachian Proud. Get something that you can put on there to show that you are special and worth more money. So know what your costs are to get started. Think about your capital investment. How much is your building going to cost? How much is your chicken house going to cost? Are you going to put fencing for free range? a cooler for putting your eggs in when you collect them. Know your operating costs. How much do the pullets cost? Whether you raise them yourself or you're buying them. How much is the feed going to cost? The egg cartons, veterinary supplies, bedding, water, utilities. And don't forget your own labor. Count money for yourself as well, because why raise them if you're not going to, make money? So here's some types of production systems. This is a free range system with pasture here in Lexington, actually. And this guy has them out there year round, and he doesn't close them in. They can come and go as they please. He has nest boxes for them to go into to lay their eggs, and then he goes out twice a day to collect them. You can see where the feed is underneath in order to keep it from the rain. You have to think about, okay, this is a cheaper chicken house than, one with ventilation and everything, but how do you get the water to him? He has to bring them out, with the tractor. He needs a tractor to move that thing because he needs to rotate his pastures, because the chickens will finish up that pasture really easy. And if he wants to keep fresh pasture, he needs to move that chicken house around. Predator control. He has a dog out there that is good for keeping the predators away, right? If you're going to give supplemental light and you have something way out there, how are you going to do that? He does not give supplemental light, so he just goes with, if the days get shorter, they'll go out of production somewhat, and he just takes the reduced production in stride. This is a cage-free type system, so they are completely indoors, but they're not in cages. They're free to roam around. They have roosts to get in onto. They have nest boxes. They have feeders. You have to have bedding down. So, you have your bedding material costs. You have your water and egg collections easier. If you want to add light, it's much easier. Predator control is definitely much easier. And you get composted bedding material plus manure that you can, if you compost it, you can sell it for an extra product that you are selling. Whereas, with the free range, they're depositing the manure directly on the farm. So you're getting the fertilizer value. You're not selling it as fertilizer value. If we go back to the pullets that we talked about last week with raising replacement pullets, you can see that, the stages of growth, and you want to make sure that you're feeding them right, getting the right body weights, and you need to think about medullary bone. Chickens have a special bone called medullary bone. It serves as a source of calcium to the hen when she's laying eggs. It's like a calcium bank that she can take calcium from when she's having high eggshell production. And so that we saw here that the medullary bone was still being developed when they are in egg production. So think about that. If you are getting pullets, if you're purchasing pullets, make sure you have all the necessary information about the birds that you get. What breed is it? What age are they when you get them? What lighting program was used? What body weights what's the average body weight and the uniformity of body weight in the birds that you are purchasing? What feeder type was used when they were raised? Because they may not adapt to whatever feeder type you have. What water type did they use? If it's different than what you have to spend more time teaching them to eat and drink. What feeding program did they have? Any vaccination programs? Were they beak trimmed? All of those things. If you are not raising them yourself, if you're purchasing ready to lay pullets, you need that information in order to best manage your laying flock. You also need to know how stressful was transport from the pullet farm to your farm. How much of a stress are they going to go through when you're trying to place them into your poultry house? So the age at placement depends on breed to some degree. So the red sex links that I talked about in the last week's lecture, they're equivalent to the Isa Brown commercial strain, and they start laying at 16 to 17 weeks of age. So you want them placed by 15 weeks of age. Some of the other breeds that do more of the green and the olive eggers and Easter eggers and all of those types of eggs of breeds, they come into production later. They don't start till 18 to 20 weeks. So you can maybe delay it when you place them. But so when you place them, you need to give them time to adapt before egg production is due to start. So make sure that they are adapting to the house. They need to be able to find feed and water right away, especially water after they have transported if it's a stressful situation. You make sure they learn to use the perches and roosts. That usually isn't a problem because they love to perch. They have that need to perch, and they'll use them. If they go outside, make sure that they can find their way back at nighttime. So you may have to, go out at dusk and make sure that they're all getting in. And you need to make sure that they're using the nests. So nests should be available as soon as you start lighting them, so that by the time they're laying eggs, they have nest boxes ready to be used. You don't want floor eggs. Floor eggs tend to get pretty dirty. Looking at the production curve that we talked about at the end of last week's webinar, you can see that the weeks of age will vary by breed, but they come into production quickly. Then they peak and then slowly decline. Average egg weight also increases until it peaks. And at the same time as they are starting to lay eggs, they are still growing. So you have to remember that the body weight is still going up. So when you place your pullets into the laying house, their nutritional requirements include the nutrients needed for maintenance, for further growth, and for the beginning of egg production. So all of those things have to be met with the nutritional requirements. So it's important to provide a complete feed. No scratch grains or cracked corn, just a complete feed. And I try and explain it this way. If we make an analogy to how we want a nice, nutritious meal, we need various components to meet our nutritional requirements. So if we compare that to a chicken, okay, they need the grains for energy. And in the poultry diets here in the United States, that's usually corn. In Canada and Europe, it's more wheat and barley. And some of the organics might be wheat and barley more than corn because of the need for non-GMO. So we get a lot of non-GMO corn here in Kentucky, so it's usually not an issue. But so the grains are providing the energy. And the protein provides the amino acids that are necessary. And typically that's a soybean meal or a cake if it's organic. Some might use field peas, canola meal, sunflower seed meal. All of those can provide the required amino acids for the poultry. What we consider, the vitamins and fruits and veggies are providing vitamins and trace minerals, amongst other things, of course. And we provide a vitamin and trace mineral mix that we add to the feed. And they also, of course, are laying hens. So they need calcium and phosphorus, not only for the eggshells, but for their skeleton as well. And so limestone and dicalcium phosphate are often added to the feeds to provide that requirement. So if you look at the nutritional requirements that have been determined for various ages of chickens, from chicker starter all the way up to layers, they are all based on a particular energy level. And all the other nutrients, the crude protein, the amounts of amino acids, the calcium, the phosphorus, the sodium, the chloride are all based on that energy level. If you change that energy level, you have to change the proportions of the other feed as well. So if you add scratch grains and cracked corn to this nicely formulated diet that's going to meet all of those nutritional requirements, you are basically adding energy only. And so you are diluting all those other nutrients, and nutritional deficiencies will occur. You will start having all sorts of health problems by doing that. Most of the time when I get phone calls from people that are having trouble with especially egg layers, it's because they are feeding scratch grains and cracked corn to try and reduce their feed costs and are causing health problems as a result. If you have the chickens on pasture, I get a lot of questions of how much nutrients can they get from pasture. Okay, so they're on forage, they have insects. Can that possibly supplement the complete feed? Sure, they might get a few insects, they might get, you know, a little bit from the grass. We did a study here. We looked at what insects are attracted to what crop. It varies considerably depending on what crop it is, depends on the time of the year. Different bugs come out at different times. Some can be more easily digested than others because of the chitin level and the shell of the insects. And you know, chickens will finish them up pretty darn quick. And again, forages, it depends on the type of forage, depends on how you manage the forage. Is it nice and green and lush, or is it really old growth? Old growth's not going to help you much at all. So if you look at the difference between the cow, which has a rumen, which is a vat full of bacteria and other microorganisms, that is what deletes the grass and stuff that they eat. Chickens are not cows. They do not have a rumen. They do have a ceca, which are two blind pouches near the end of the reproductive tract. You can see them down here. They have bacteria in there that can digest as well, but it's way down at the end of the digestive tract. They don't get much nutrients from them. So the contribution from forage and insects is very small, maybe 5 to 10%, depending on many factors. Don't count on it. Make sure that you are giving them a complete feed that meets all of their nutritional requirements. So depends on the forage crop species, depends on the crop growth and maintenance, and the rotation of pastures. They will very quickly eat up all that grass in there, and their digging will pick it all up. You also, if you're trying to mix your own feed, watch out for mycotoxins. Especially in Kentucky this year, we are going to have a mycotoxin problem. So be careful of the feeds. Keep an eye out for mycotoxins. If you're buying complete feed, they should be sampling their feed to make sure that they're not getting mycotoxins in it, but you need to keep a track of it. It's a good idea, you know, if you're trying to make money off your chickens, keep a sample of the feed every time you buy it, stick it in the fridge or freezer, and if something happens, to the flock, you have a source of feed that you can get analyzed. And if the feed is the source of the problem, then you can sue the feed company to get reimbursement for any bad feed. But if you do not keep a sample of feed, then you have nothing to prove that it was the feed mill's fault and not yours. Excuse me, I have a cat here. It's driving me nuts.
Seems like you ought to cat about like my dogs.
Yeah. Okay, so if you have mycotoxins, you're going to see a decrease in feed intake. You're going to see a decline in body weight. The immune response is going to go down, so you could have a disease problem. Egg production, shell quality can all decline. Increases in mortality and leg problems. So if you're starting to see that and you have a sample of the feed that can be sent in for analysis, then you can prove that it was the feed. If those things happen, it could be that you have a disease and it's your fault, not the feed mills. But if you don't have the feed, you don't know for sure one way or the other. Again, on our website, we have resources. We have the fact sheet, Feeds and Feeding for Small Egg Production Enterprises in Kentucky, how to read a feed label, and to know how much should your chickens be eating. There is a fact sheet for that as well. So some of the reproductive problems, just to remind you from last time, we looked at peritonitis, egg bound, and prolapse. So everything is tightly in that cavity of the chicken, and chickens don't put fat between muscle fibers. They put it in a fat pad in the abdomen or under the skin. So you can see how that fat pad could, compact things and make it difficult. So overweight fat chickens are going to be a problem. The female reproductive tract is made up of two parts. They are separate parts. There's the ovary and the oviduct. So sometimes you will get the ovulated yolk not being picked up by the infundibulum, which is that first part of the reproductive tract. So they are separate, so that infundibulum, which is a muscle, comes over the ovulated yolk, and that leads into the rest of the oviduct. If it just happens once or twice, no big deal. The yolk is reabsorbed and life goes on. But if it happens too often, the yolk, which is a great medium for bacteria, can become infected and you can have yolk peritonitis. Peritonitis is an inflammation of the peritoneum, which is basically the tissue that lines the abdominal wall. You can get peritonitis from other reasons, but internal laying, as they call it, can also be one possibility. You will see them sitting more like a penguin. They get that abdominal distension. They stop eating and drinking, and they may, if they lay any eggs at all, may lay deformed or soft-shelled eggs. And a lot of it is genetic, so it depends on what birds you're getting. Stress will do it, but the one that you can control is overweight hens. An intestinal parasite load can also be a problem. If you're free ranging, make sure that you are rotating your pastures so that you don't get a buildup of intestinal parasites. There really isn't a good dewormer for laying hens, so you don't want that going on. With egg bound, the egg gets stuck in the oviduct itself. And so if an hen is straining for several hours to produce an egg, then typically they're egg bound, and you still get that penguin type of composition. And a lot of this comes from low blood calcium levels, so that if you're not feeding properly, if you're feeding those scratch grains and whatever, and you're getting a calcium deficiency, or if the diet is unbalanced because the different minerals interact with each other, or if the hen is really obese, then you may get it happening a lot more in your flock, and there's nothing you can do. You basically lose your hen. Mycotoxins in the feed can also cause a problem. So when the egg is laid with prolapse, when the egg is laid, the vagina comes out. So the eggshell comes down small end first, and then when she lays, she flips it, everts the cloaca out, and the vagina comes out, and the egg is laid large end first. This makes it so that they don't come in contact with the fecal material in the cloaca. And the vagina then immediately goes back inside. So prolapse is when it doesn't go back. And so if the protruding organ, the vagina is there, then other chickens see it, they'll peck at it, and they can even pull it out. And sometimes you open up a dead bird and they have no intestines, no reproductive tract, because they got pecked out. They all got pulled out. You can also get bleeding from the vent, and alternatively, if they just picked at it a little bit, the vagina swells and can't be retract, and then you get what's called a blowout, and she won't be a very good layer, and you need to get rid of her. Prolapses, the age of the hens, you might see it, at peaking production. And if you have too high of a light intensity, you can also sometimes see it because the other hens see that oviduct out there and are more likely to peck it. But the things that you can control, if the pullets are too small when you light stimulate them to bring them into production, or if they're overweight and tend to lay larger eggs, laying lots of double yolks, or if they have too much fat around the reproductive organs, they get muscle weakness and they could have it. And again, from the unbalanced feed rations with the calcium, aside from being important in the shell and bones, calcium is also important in muscle function. And if there is a low blood calcium, your muscles aren't functioning properly. Sometimes you will get blood spot eggs. That's not a big thing to worry about unless you're getting a lot of them. When an egg ovulates, it releases the yolk from the follicle along the stigma, or suture line, some call it, and that's basically the area that is not vascularized, does not have blood vessels, and and so if a blood vessel goes across it, it might break, and you get a little bit of blood in the egg. If you're getting a lot of them, and brown egg layers tend to be more susceptible to it, or you're getting a lot of blood in your eggs, you have a vitamin K deficiency, so something's wrong with your feed. If you're getting a lot of double yolkers, that's because they ovulate 2 eggs at the same time. You might see those when the hens are really young and just starting to figure out the whole hormone system, or when they're really old and it's starting to break down. So double yolkers are not something to worry about unless you're getting a lot of them. Egg size. Egg size is very much based on breed. So some breeds produce smaller eggs than others. Ambient temperature. So in hot temperatures, chickens reduce their egg consumption, and so they'll get reduced egg size as well as reduced egg production. Lighting programs can do it. So the size of the body weights of the hen when you stimulate them to come into production can affect the size of the eggs that are being laid. The younger the hen when they start, the smaller the eggs will be for their first year of production. Age of the hens, I said, the younger the hens, the smaller the eggs. As the hens get older, the egg usually increases. Hens at 20 to 26 weeks of age usually lay smaller eggs than hens at 40 to 50 weeks of eggs. Then the maximum egg size is when the hens are about a year old. And feed intake, anything that affects feed intake is going to affect the egg size. Water consumption will also affect feed consumption, but water consumption will affect egg size since there's a lot of water in eggs. Again, nutrition, methionine levels, linoleic acid levels in the diet will affect egg size as well. So that's why it's important to feed a nice, nutritious diet. And some diseases can affect egg production, egg size as well. Okay, so if you want to meet your production potential, controlling light is important. Chickens can detect light through the top of their skull with the pineal gland. It sets off all the hormone response. So if you want to maintain year-round production, you have to make sure that the number of hours of light per day does not decrease. Chickens come into production with increasing day length and go out of production with decreasing day length. So you want to make sure that you maintain a minimum of 14 hours of light per day to keep them in production year round. You don't want to go over 16 hours, but you don't want it to drop at all. So if they're getting older, you've got them on 14 hours of light and it's getting later in the year and then you might see a little bit of drop in production, you can bump it up to 16 to try and keep them going a little bit longer, but don't go over 16 hours of light a day. And you can use a light timer that you can sit in and you can get dusted on light bulbs so that the bulbs only come on when it's dark out, and you set the timer to make sure that you maintain that 14 hours of light per day. So daily care of a flock of laying hens. When you make sure that you walk the house routinely, look at things like, how are the hens distributed throughout the house? Are they avoiding certain areas? Is it too bright somewhere, too dark somewhere else? How are the hens doing? Are they panting? Hens will pant when it gets too hot. They can't sweat, so that panting is their way of losing heat. So are the hens showing that they're too hot? Are they all feeding, drinking? And if you're providing dust bathing, are they preening? Are they roosting? Look for the normal things that they do and make sure that they're doing them. Look at the litter. Is there any litter that's caking over? If so, remove it. Are there any feed and water spills that need to be cleaned up? Are the feeders and waterers working? Are they at the right height for the size of the hens? Is there any leaking? Or are the waters, especially if you're using nipple drinkers, are they clogged? Make sure that they're all working. Is there any, spoiled feed, any moldy feed in the feeders? If so, get it out of there. Listen to the hens. Are they snicking, sneezing, or making other respiratory noises? What are the vocalizations like? How do the noises compare from one visit to a next? Smell the feed. Does it feel fresh or musty? How's the air? Make sure there's not too much ammonia in your laying house. Periodically pick up a chicken. Look at it. How are its feet and hocks? Make sure that there's no irritation markings. How's the vent? Make sure there's no loose droppings sticking to the vent. How's the beak and tongue? Make sure there's no nasal discharge or feed sticking to the beak. No signs of tongue discoloration, which could be mycotoxins. Check the crop, which is on the outside of the body cavity at the neck. Make sure it's full, that they're still eating. Make sure it's not really hard, because then it could get plugged and you could get pendulous crop. How are what's the general behavior, wealth, and being of the bird? Periodically look at the eyes, look at the skin, make sure there's no scratches. How's the breast? Are there any blisters? How's the feathering? Are there any that are being feather pecked? How are the legs? How are the chickens walking? Are they okay? Grab a sample of litter from different areas of the house and see what it looks like. So litter management is important for controlling disease. Remove any caked litter. Top dress with fresh litter if it's needed. Remove manure from under the roosts regularly so you don't get that buildup with ammonia smell. If you pick up a handful of litter, squeeze it. If it sticks, slightly adhere to your hands, and when you drop it, it breaks down. That should be good. If it stays compact, even when you drop it, then it's too wet. And if it adheres to your hand when you squeezed, it's too dry. Excessive litter moisture, more than 35%, can cause, welfare problems and health issues. It can also, excuse me, contribute to high levels of ammonia in the house, which will affect the respiratory tract. Again, if you're using built-up litter as your way of going, remove any cake litter, especially under the waterers. Did you have a question, Tony?
No.
Okay. Make sure that you have a biosecurity program to control disease. You have some diseases that are vertically transmitted. So that's why you want to make sure that when you buy your chickens, you get them from a National Poultry Improvement Plan certified, whether it's chicks or pullets, from a NPIP certified flock, so that they are tested, the breeders are tested to make sure that no diseases are being transmitted through the eggs. And then you want to control the horizontal transmission from one bird to the next using your biosecurity program. So you have to watch out for equipment. You have to watch out for people, because they can carry disease on their boots, their clothing, on their hands. Vehicles can carry it, bird to bird, from carcasses, manure, litter, feathers, sometimes if you have farms nearby. Equipment can do it. So all of those different things can transmit disease from one flock to another. Whoops. So restrict access to your poultry property and flock. You should be the only one going in there, or whoever takes care of your birds. Put a barrier up. Make sure there's a fence to keep people out. Put up a sign that says, no one coming in, biosecurity program. Game birds and migratory waterfowl can be a source of disease for your flock. So if possible, keep them out. Kind of hard to do when you're free ranging, but the more you can keep them out, the better. Oops, come on, why aren't you working? Make sure you have clean clothes, scrub your shoes for disinfectant, wash your hands before entering and leaving the bird area. Clean cages, change food and water daily. Any equipment that comes in contact with their birds or the droppings, make sure they're washed. Properly dispose of any dead birds. If you need to be near where other bird owners are, such as a feed store, clean and disinfect your car or truck. If you borrow any poultry cages or equipment, wash them before you bring them home. If you're sharing equipment, whether it's even for mowing the lawn around your poultry house to keep out mice and rodents, if you're borrowing them, make sure you clean them before you bring them to your house, and clean them before you take them back. Make sure that you know what the signs of disease are. Sudden increases in death. So keep good records of mortality, feed consumption, egg production. Keep all of those records. Any sneezing, gasping for air, coughing, nasal discharge. What does the manure look like? Do you have diarrhea? Well, they have diarrhea. Are the birds lethargic? Have they stopped eating? Is there a drop in egg production? Are you starting to get soft or thin-shelled eggs? Swelling around the eggs, neck and head. Purple discoloration of the combs, wattles, legs. Tremors, drooping wings, circling, different neurological problems. Early detection is important for the prevention of the spread of the disease. So make sure you're keeping your eye out for them. And don't wait. If you see sick or dying birds, contact your local veterinarian, get your birds to the diagnostic lab to find out what it is as soon as possible. The sooner you can treat them, the better off you are. And as a reminder, always wash your hands after handling live poultry or eggs so that you do not give yourself salmonella. So especially if you're having your kids helping with the flock, make sure anyone who handles anything related to poultry washes their hands afterwards. It's always a good idea to have a little hand sanitizing station right by the poultry house so that when they're leaving, they clean themselves, wash, put on some hand sanitizer so they can get in the house and wash their hands. Again, our resource page specifically for Kentucky information at thesmallflocks.net, and the Facebook page that we have all of the webinars posted on. And publications, we do have a publication on why have my hens stopped laying. Questions you can ask yourself if they stop laying eggs. And then if you need to molt your flock to get an extra year out of them or an extra few months out of them, we have a publication for that. In terms of nationally, we have the e-extension, the electronic version of the National Cooperative Extension Service, which is poultryextension.org. We have a Facebook page. We have monthly webinars. We have several upcoming and that are previously recorded. We have articles. We have a blog. We have Ask an Extension where you can put in a question, although it's faster to email me directly. And that is what I have. Oops. So, did we get any questions?
No, there's no questions at the moment.
Okay, anybody want to type in the chat box what their questions are? We're a little over time. So we'll see what questions we get. Okay, not seeing any questions. Okay. Nobody has any questions.
Anybody got any questions verbally?
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions, so we are going to start the webinar here. Next week is on ducks for egg production, if you are interested in doing that. And then we will start 3 on meat production. So hopefully we'll see you next week or whenever. So I'm going to stop the recording.
All right. Thank you.